Today we've come to the financial center of Abu Dhabi. Al Reem Island is a zone that is under British law. Today I want to show you a very interesting project called Riviera by the developer Merit. Now we're going to take a look at this floating island. This is the project's showroom. We'll look at the finishing quality inside, so you can better visualize your future project. Today we have a very interesting guest, Michael Belton, the person who is the main inspiration and organizer. I think, Michael, if you hadn't been involved in this project, it wouldn't have turned out like this.
Well, it's a big team effort, to be honest. We have a special group that handles product development, and that's from concept to completion. So I'm a big part of this team, of course, but we have people who think every day about how people will live once the project is finished. So from concept to completion, we all work together.
I agree, but no man is an island, yet you've managed to build such a unique team. I'm familiar with your team, and I know how much every single person in your team cares about this project and really wants. People are driven to create a unique project in Abu Dhabi.
Well, that's us. That's Merit.
And you know, it all starts at the top with the visionary. I mean, it's the owner himself. I believe the motivation of a business owner, a leader, lies in this. When you, as the owner, create a vision of an ideal future. In this case, the project. I believe it's the best project on Al Reem today. And you created this project, you saw it in your mind, presented it to your team. Your team fell in love with this project too, just like you did. And that's why you're seeing such a great realization of this project now. So don't downplay your achievements. I think that's probably the most important task for you as a leader. Let me tell you a bit about Michael. Michael lived in Russia for 25 years. He's married to a Russian woman. Michael has 5 children. And can you imagine how well someone who lived in Russia for 25 years speaks Russian? Very well, even though you're originally from Alaska.
I'm American, yes, from Alaska.
Tell us how you ended up in Russia, how you were swept there, and about your journey in Russia and to Abu Dhabi.
It's quite a long story, but basically, since I was born in Alaska, we always had some kind of connection with the Soviet Union. The sister city of Fairbanks, Alaska, is Magadan. So in my childhood, we were somehow connected with people who were from the Soviet Union. Furthermore, Alaska used to be Russian territory, and there are still some villages there where people speak an old form of Russian. But that's just a general story. And I'm a hockey player myself. I still play. And in my childhood, the best team, of course, was the Soviet Union's Red Machine. And I've always had this childhood dream of playing hockey in the Soviet Union and in Russia. The last thing I was doing, I was an engineer, and at one point I ended up at a university that had a course related to the Soviet Union. How people live there, what their customs are, what their traditions are. And it so happened that after that class I said that I wanted to go to Russia and study. I studied in Leningrad for 1 semester on an exchange. A student from Leningrad went to my university in Massachusetts, and I went there. And after that, I kind of fell in love with it, started studying the Russian language. And that's it. My story kind of went step by step after that. I got into development in 1993. I worked for a big American developer. Then I worked at Millhouse Capital for Roman Abramovich. I headed his development business. And my path just kept going and going and going. And always my skills were, I looked at what worked in America, and I could bring it to Russia. And there were no good hotels after communism, no good office centers, no good housing. I was able to bring in good architects. I could bring in technology. And people realized that it's actually better to live in a more open space, to live in an apartment with finishing. There was no finishing there before. I was the first one who brought finishing to apartments in Russia. I did the first business center that exists in Russia, at Krylatsky Hills. So my experience from America, I could just transport it right into Russia. That was my success.
What years were those? When was that?
Well, I started in 1993. I left in 2022,
So you've come a very long way.
I think that I lived in Russia much longer than many Russians who are now 25, 30 years old.
Michael, and what projects did you do in Russia?
Well, a couple of very famous projects. One is Krylatsky Hills, which is the first business park in Russia, where Microsoft, Cisco, British American Tobacco used to be, but all the top IT companies that exist. Next, I did Pokrovsky Hills. It's a residential property near the Anglo-American school. We actually bought the whole territory of about 15 hectares of land, gave the school 6.5 hectares of land, and built the first townhouse project in Moscow there. What else did we do? We have the Aquatoria project on Leningradskoy Highway, a very famous project. Right on the Moskva River. There's Philly Park, there's Soho NoHo, a lot of projects. I built the Dream House in Barvika. So many different projects.
But these projects are for a discerning audience, a very discerning audience.
Well, I think that was our path. I also built the Bulgari Hotel and the Bulgari Residence on Bolshaya Nikitskaya. Now, unfortunately, it's not Bulgari anymore, it's called Stella Moscow. But again, I could I could take ideas that were popular in Europe and bring them over to Russia. That Bulgari project is interesting because I was the first to create the kind of boutique hotel with a residence. It was branded as Bulgari, 50 rooms, just a perfect combination on Bolshaya and Nikitskaya.
That's a massive amount of experience. So you've been in construction and development for over 30 years.
And not just in Russia. I've worked in the Caribbean, St. Bart's, Turks, and Caicos. In New York, we had 2 projects that we built. In London, Paris, my company was global before I even came here.
Have you ever counted how many projects were completed in total, in terms of numbers or square meters?
Well, square meters, I think it's about, 1,800,000 square meters, something like that.
That's just an incredible amount of construction experience. You really have to love what you do.
Yes. Well, I think we all love development. We all love what we do. We create something out of nothing, and it stands for 100 years. And all my children, I don't just have 5 kids, I have 5 daughters. So they're all daughters. And each of them, they've seen what their dad does. I bring them on weekends to see the foundations. Then, when the walls are going up, when the roof is on. And we've actually lived in many of those projects ourselves. That's why I have an apartment in Iconic, which we're building in Dubai. I have an apartment here as well. I think we'll definitely end up living in one of them. And my daughters, who live here in the Emirates, will see what their dad is building. In Dubai, we drive along Sheikh Zayed Road, and every day they look. There's dad's building. That's a very powerful source of inspiration for me.
So how did the idea for this project here even come about? I know you're building the stunning Iconic project in Dubai, and you've come here with your most ambitious project yet. So you're now on Al Reem, and I know all the projects and all the developers here. Omaira is the only thing we can really compare it to, maybe the Four Seasons, in terms of the level of service you're planning here. And as of right now, maybe the Four Seasons on Al Maraya Island or on Saadiyat. Those are your closest competitors in terms of the amenities and facilities for residents, and the quality you're promising for the end consumer. Where did this idea come from? Why Abu Dhabi, and why this specific location?
Well, we really like projects that are right on the water. And when we arrived, we bought this site almost 3 years ago. 2 sites actually, and we could see the potential that Al Reem has. I'd say, before us, all the projects on Al Reem were quite average. And our goal was to elevate Al Reem overall because it's the heart of Abu Dhabi. If you look at the map, it's right in the middle. It looks like a heart. And we realized that if the right infrastructure was added, we heard there would be additional bridges going towards Saadiyat. We knew there would be a marina being built by Aldar. It's like no one really understood this location. When we bought it, we could have also done something mediocre, something uninteresting, without good amenities, without infrastructure. But we decided, let's do something that, first of all, we'd be proud to show off, right, and something that could raise the overall price level in Al Reem. Because when we chose our architect, well, it's not a cheap architect, I'll tell you that.
For those who don't know, Herzog and de Meuron is an architectural firm from Switzerland. Just to clarify a bit, there is, for example, the Nobel Prize in Science for contributions to science for scientific achievements, and there's a similar Pritzker Prize for a specific contribution to architecture. And the company Mird, they hired these architects. These are people who know their stuff. These are world-renowned architects.
I'll give a couple of examples of projects Herzog has done. If you know the Tate Modern in London, right, and in Beijing, during the Olympics, that stadium that looks like a nest, that's also theirs. In New York, there's a building called the Jenga Building. It has every apartment jutting out in a very interesting geometric way. All of their projects are different, and when you start, you don't know what you'll get, but you know you'll get something very interesting. And here, the project turned out truly unique because of the terracing. We'll go now and you'll see the models. We have these villas that look directly down onto our harbor, and all the apartments are very interesting. The layout is interesting. We have many geometric shapes that repeat and don't repeat. So the building, it will be something that no one will be able to replicate. While you can replicate something made of glass, this will be very, very hard to copy. And the facade itself is very expensive, high cost, which provides exactly the premium feel people will want.
Plus high ceilings, panoramic glazing, the highest quality finishes, all the standards you've brought, including from Europe. I think you're a bit of a disruptor, probably, right. The kind of person who enters the market and sets new rules of the game. That's how it was in Russia with your projects, and now you're doing the same with Iconic. And you'll do the same with the Riviera project.
Well, the history of Mird came from Russia. There's a very famous developer there called Pioneer. Pioneer Development, which builds the very best projects that you can find in Moscow. They followed their own path, and they realized that by entering the elite segment, they could work with the very best architects. They used high-end materials, and the clients really want what we're able to deliver. And their idea was, our clients from Russia came to Abu Dhabi and to Dubai. Everyone complains that there isn't much quality here. So, if we can create a property that meets their quality standards, then we believe we can capture a large share of the market. We aren't competing with Matin or Aldar or, Imar. We understand our market. It's people who value quality, who don't just buy one apartment after another. They either invest their money knowing they can rent it out better than elsewhere, or they expect the price to increase later. Because if there's some kind of crisis here, prices usually drop. But with our properties, we believe the price won't drop, simply because the project is so unique.
I'll just add that the Al Reem location is truly unique. It's the financial hub of Abu Dhabi, and you could probably only compare it to Manhattan. In fact, 10,000 companies were registered here just in the last year alone. In the midst of everything, BlackRock entered the market here, with $13 trillion under management, followed by several other major investment funds. To understand the location, you have to see that the biggest investment funds and companies are moving here. Abu Dhabi is the capital of the Emirates, the heart of political and economic decision-making. And these companies opening offices here are bringing in their own staff, 600, 800, even 1,000 jobs. And these are all very highly paid professionals. This is a very affluent, high-income demographic. Their companies cover their living expenses. So the heads of these funds and top managers are all looking for high-quality housing right now. Do you know what the most interesting statistic is? I just calculated it yesterday. I'm actually about to release an episode on market analytics. And what we found is that for high-quality apartments, while demand in Dubai is 1.6 people per unit, in Abu Dhabi it's 46. We looked at the data, knowing that Abu Dhabi and Dubai have similar populations of 3.7 million. Official figures from last year show that the number of residents and end users grew by 7.5%. That means 310,000 people moved to Abu Dhabi permanently last year, but only 16,500 apartments were actually delivered. This year, it's only 6,500, so the demand on the secondary market is incredibly high, and again, from a very affluent audience. I'm saying this so our viewers can really understand why your project is so unique, because these people, who earn high salaries and whose companies pay them very well, they also expect and are used to having the very best of everything. And if we look at the market, we see that there are projects with standard, typical layouts, and they're not that. In Abu Dhabi, there are only about 20 developers, roughly, and some of them are state-owned. And there isn't that fierce competition or such a high volume of new projects, which is why you're currently ahead of the pack. And it's just amazing how you chose the right location and the right concept, specifically based on the needs of the market. On another interesting note, I wanted to ask, what did you encounter? What kind of problems?
Well, I'll tell you what we thought and how it actually turned out. We had heard that things move very slowly in Abu Dhabi, that it's traditional here, that they're inflexible, and it would be difficult. We bought the site thinking we'd probably be struggling with them for a long time. This master developer we bought the land from is Aldar, which is this massive machine, a real giant. But as it turned out, we were able to reach an agreement with them regarding the purchase quite quickly. They approved our project relatively fast. We went on sale last November, and 80% of the project has already been sold. So for us, it's surprising that the market is, first of all, so good for developers that Aldar is helping us, and ADGM, they register all our contracts. They help us too. They were here for the opening of our floating experience center, so everyone is helping us in some way. And I don't know if they want to compete with Dubai or not, but they're doing everything they can to help us out. Both Modin and Aldar tell us, guys, we see everything you're doing, and we want to work with you more. So everyone is acting less like competitors and more like they want to be colleagues. It's very pleasant here, to be honest.
And what about the team, for example? I know that it's quite difficult, after all. A team is always a challenge. How do you solve that problem? Where do you find them? Well, the core team, I understand your backbone is already formed. How are you building the team here?
I have about 30 years of experience in development, and my partner, who is the owner of Pioneer, he also has 30 years of work in development. So for certain key positions, we just open our phones and start looking at who could fill a top-level role. For the positions that are lower down, well, we use LinkedIn. We put people through testing. We try to understand if they have the professional and emotional experience to work on our project. Because if a standard person comes here to our site who doesn't share our vision, then the project won't succeed. So the core is the company that's been working with us for quite a long time. And then we add people, and we try to grow this talent from within the company.
Within the company, right. So you still prefer to grow your own talent rather than hiring from outside?
Development takes 5 years. Yes, that's design, approvals, and 3 years of construction. So if you're hiring new people every 6 months or every year, it's just chaos.
Actually, there's a statistic that a bad hire for a top manager costs a year's salary. Those losses wild day. I've often come across this myself. I've hired project managers and always monitored them for 6 months to see what's happening, because they can cause such a mess that you'll be exhausted cleaning up after them. So people are very important. And of course, human resources and the fact that you nurture them within the team is also very cool.
Well, I'd say it's also important that the builders here, there are good builders here. They've built a lot over the last 20 years or so there are good builders. You just have to manage them. Even those who are adapting our project here are quite qualified. So the market here has many people with high quality and good qualifications. You just simply have to manage them.
Proper management. And what's the difference between doing business in construction in Russia and here?
First of all, I'm American, so I have a more international perspective. My main business was in Russia, but we also built in London, Paris, the south of France, and America. So I've worked with everyone, but I would say that Russian professionals are probably some of the best. I've had few Americans working with me. Even in America, I had many Russian employees. Americans can sometimes be lazy. They don't really feel the need to do much anymore. Russians want to fulfill their ambitions and want to build a career. And so, a large part of our company, if we have 70 people in the Emirates working for Mird, 20 people either have a Russian passport or are Russian speaking. So the main core is actually Russian. Many of my partners are Russian. Many of my investors are Russian. Many of my buyers are Russian. So it's not that different here for our business. Our values that we have in the company here are very similar to the ones we had in Russia.
Tell us, how do you work with buyers? And I know that you offer a unique service that no one else on the market offers. Tell us about it.
I'd say the first thing is that we often get, for example, a client from you, right? You brought us a client, made a deal, signed the SPA, got the money, and then forgot about them. That's not our story. We have this post-sales, process. Every 6 months, we update people on what our plans are. Which plans have we completed? We hold events for people who've already bought, so they feel like part of our project. Not just when they get the keys, but throughout the process. So, for those who like to visit the site, we let people onto our construction grounds. In Dubai, twice a week, any buyer who's already purchased can come and see their apartment. Often, they don't allow access until completion. We want to show people that our site is clean, that the workers, they're qualified, they all have their safety gear, and we're proud that our site is so clean. This is our general approach. We also consider ourselves a boutique developer. Here we have 900 apartments, in Dubai 310, but 60% of those buyers went through my office, so that I could talk to them, so they'd feel what kind of company we are. When we're selling, maybe, 5,000 apartments a year, well, I won't be able to do that, but my deputies will still handle this process so people feel like part of the Merida family. And when we launch new projects, we have a friends and family program. If you're our investors, if you're our employees, or if you bought an apartment, we give people carte blanche to buy apartments in new projects at the very lowest price, and there's already a discount specifically for friends and family. Then, when a project is finished, we have a part of our business that handles property management. If, for example, you bought an apartment and want to rent it out, you could do Airbnb, which is kind of chaotic and unclear. Our management center is ready to take care of that. In Moscow, I think we have 3,000 apartments that we manage. That's our company, yes. They're opening a branch here, and they're ready to organize everything, from furniture to cleaning the apartment, to renting it out, and everything. So with us, it'll be full support through all stages of the real estate cycle.
That's a very important point, by the way, because for many investors, this is a key question. A lot of investors now, especially from Russia and Kazakhstan, those who can read trends, realize that, well, we can even look at the March events that took place in the Emirates. If you look at the statistics, which you can do, by the way, I did it in another episode, you can check it out, you'll see that the Abu Dhabi market didn't react at all. So if we compare the first quarter of this year and the first quarter of last year, the transaction volume last year was 7 billion, this year it's 12, so it grew by 5 billion. And prices here now, if we compare, let's take Al Reem, for example. On Al Reem, the rental cost over the past year has increased by 37%. And that's the market average including older buildings. But if we look at quality, by the way, the market is very different when a project is high quality. Right now, the only high quality projects, well, good, completed projects, are the SAS ones. You probably know SAS, Reem 9, Reem 5. You can't buy an apartment in those projects. You can't even rent one, because they're in such high demand. And that's not even on the waterfront. It's not some branded developer or exceptional quality or amenities. It's just a good building, with, by our standards, good quality, not excellent. A good building, good construction quality. And that's why buyers and tenants are lining up. There's a shortage of good quality housing on the market. That's why Merit is here now with their Riviera project. Plus, you're right on the waterfront. I know you're planning to build your own marina here as well.
I'd say what's interesting here is that if you buy a house, apartment, or villa on Saadiyat, you're still quite far from the water. And in the evening, when it's dark, you can't see anything, but here we're right on the front line. It's about 30 meters from the building to the water, with a view of our harbor, looking straight across to ADGM, and it's beautiful at night. So, this combination of waterfront living, the shoreline, restaurants, and cafes, it's just going to be gorgeous.
It's also important to add the Al Reem Island, what makes the location unique. It's the center of Abu Dhabi, the heart of Abu Dhabi, yet it's perfect for families because Repton, Nord Anglia, GEMS World Academy, Sorbonne, INSEAD Business School, the best in the world. are all right here, along with corporate offices. And you have Reem Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, and the future terminus for the train connecting Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So everything for living is already here. The infrastructure is ready. You don't have to wait 5, 7, or 10 years for the area to develop. Plus, it's a great investment location right now because if we compare it, across the way is Saadiyat, a great project, the cultural district, but you had to get in 3 or 4 years ago when it was just sand. And if we compare prices, for example, on the Mamsha waterfront, a 2-bedroom apartment costs $4.5 million. If we look at that project and that's a level for finish, let's be honest, then with Merit, which has higher quality finishes, a 2-bedroom apartment will be, I know sizes vary, but the range will be roughly $1.5 to $2 million max. Why do many choose or ask the question Dubai or Abu Dhabi? And many clients now, especially from Kazakhstan, even those who bought in Dubai, are selling and moving to Abu Dhabi. I understand why Abu Dhabi, because it's the greenest emirate, has the most beautiful beaches, no traffic jams, it's completely peaceful. Plus, the big businesses moving to the Emirates are mostly choosing the ADGM zone in Abu Dhabi these days. And there was this interesting thought that, as it turns out, families in Kazakhstan are very large, especially when there are daughters. You have 5 daughters too. And for them, it's very important to consider. How exactly did Abu Dhabi set itself apart from Dubai? Well, Abu Dhabi decided to become a global hub for culture and education. And there aren't as many evening or late night venues. There isn't that same number of ladies of the night, so to speak. And those who want their children, especially their daughters, to be in a more wholesome environment where there isn't. For us, if you visit, it might be a downside, but for some, it's a huge plus. The fact that there aren't so many night spots, it's more conservative. And the attitude is the same, very respectful towards women here. But the fact that Abu Dhabi is the safest city, everyone's known that for 10 years now. By the way, I also read some stats recently that for people living in Abu Dhabi, the trust level in the police is 97%. Well, that's one of the highest rates in the world, because even for the crimes that do occur, 80% are solved within the first 24 hours. And overall, the crime clearance rate is 99%. Because, well, everything is monitored. There are pros and cons to that. But those who, for example, want to send their daughter or children to get an education, they consider New York University or the Sorbonne. My daughter got into the Sorbonne, by the way. So that's one of the main factors, that daughters and children can live here, and parents will have peace of mind. That's a big plus. Let's talk a bit more about the project. The project is located on the first coastline, Al Reem Island, ADGM zone, with a stunningly beautiful view of the city at night. We have 2 buildings planned here. These are 2 construction phases, the first and the second. The first one has variable heights, 26 and 16 floors. And the first phase will be completed in the 3rd quarter of 2029. And the second phase in 2030. What's interesting and unusual, even on the model, you can see that this is the greenest complex in Abu Dhabi. The architectural firm Herzog and de Meuron, which we already mentioned, are Pritzker Prize winners. They really wanted to clearly convey the pearly structure of the facade, accentuating it with greenery. And at the same time, it has the largest number of amenities for residents. For pools, padel courts, yoga areas, saunas, and even rooms with ice baths. So basically, this complex has everything you need to live and feel like you're in a 5-star hotel. And interestingly, my personal favorite in this complex is that we have ocean villas, so-called villas by the ocean. There are also several sky villas here. These are villas located on the upper floors. There's also a penthouse with a 360-degree view of the city and a large area for the most discerning buyers. And now, let's go and see an example of the finishing. Of course, the ceiling height here isn't the same as it will be in the apartments, but it will give you an idea of the quality and the approach to finishing used by the developer. Let's go take a look. And here we are, up on the deck. What do you call it? The 3rd floor?
It's the terrace.
The highest terrace. Why did the developer create such a space here? So that you can see just how beautiful the view is. This building is a twin of the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. And in the evening, just imagine what a stunning view this complex will have. Michael, please tell us, what are you planning to do here?
In terms of projects, we believe we're currently building the most interesting and beautiful project in Abu Dhabi. For this, we hired the famous architects Herzog and de Meuron, who won the Pritzker Prize, and we have 2 buildings with about 900 apartments, beautiful terraces, and great access to the water. We hope to create the coolest marina in Abu Dhabi, maybe even in the Emirates, and those who live here will simply feel like they're living at a resort. We started construction about 5 months ago and will soon be above ground level. In just 3 years, the project will be finished.
As for the Riviera project, you didn't choose the name just.
Our idea is that Abu Dhabi has such crystal clear water. We wanted to bring the French Riviera, Italian Riviera feel right here to Abu Dhabi. By incorporating their culture and their unique connection to the water, it creates this beautiful fusion of the Emirates and the French Riviera.
You can already imagine what a stunning view this project is going to have. It's especially beautiful here at night when everything is lit up.
It's really beautiful here. It's lovely even during the day, but it's even better in the evening.
Michael, we're standing by the model now. Could you tell us in a few words what you love about this project? Once more, though we've already talked about it quite a bit today.
Well, like any developer, I'd have to say that I really love the location. The location is something you can never change. If you look at the distance from the building to the water, it's just great that people will be walking there, visiting the cafes and the restaurants. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'd say our infrastructure is simply the best around. No one else has infrastructure quite like this. For swimming pools, a padel court. Inside, we have a spa, a sports center, a family club, and even a club for birthday parties. And that's just in one building. Then we have a second building, which also has pools, padel courts, and all that infrastructure. So, the people living here will feel like they're living at a resort. And I think it's just wonderful to have the chance to come home after work, head down, go for a swim in the pool, play some padel, or maybe just go to the sauna to sweat it out. Then there's the architecture. We chose Herzog and de Meuron specifically so the design would really stand out, and I don't think this project will ever be replicated, simply because it's so incredibly complex. It's not just some glass building that you can easily make a copy of. It's very complex, from the architecture to the facade, the engineering, everything. So, if I were choosing for myself, I'd probably pick one of the sky villas that we have here. Or we have 5 villas on the lower floor that look directly out over the water. And if you're looking for a high quality of life, I think you'll find it here very easily.
But by the way, it's also important to mention that with this level of service and amenities, the cost of a villa, and there are only 5 of them, if we compare it to the Four Seasons project, a villa here costs roughly $5 million, whereas a 2-bedroom apartment at the Four Seasons costs $6 million. So both in terms of price and investment potential, it's a unique offer, and it's a project that's simply impossible not to fall in love with. Michael, I want to thank you. I know how busy you are. Thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure to chat and talk with you. I think our viewers will find it very interesting as well. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We'll provide all the details about the layouts, the prices, and all the conditions for this project.